I came from the, Christian higher ed background. And so there was just a lot more like flexibility wise and everything. I didn't miss as much if I was gone for like a lunch thing versus, right? There could have been a lot I missed if I was just gone for like an hour and an hour and a half. So that was actually, that's been interesting just to kind of compare.
It's so true because people don't realize that school day is really compact. It's very intense. It's very layered. And so even when you're gone for a little bit, it's like you come back and you get all caught up.
And do you know what's funny? I mean, you'll appreciate this since you were from like the education background, right? Like one of the things that was actually really interesting as adjustment wise, I'm like, golly, people are talking in increments of like 5 minutes and everything. I'm like, I was like, the only other place I think would do this would be like law firms or something, right? Yeah. But I mean, but education is the same thing.
How many conversations you have in one day in education? Like one school day, I promise you have at least 300 conversations, and they're micro conversations.
Dude, I can be up here an entire day and not vocalize anything to anybody because I'm like up here on the third floor. There's nobody else out here. Like if I'm just editing stuff, I'm just like, I'll get to the day like I didn't talk to anybody, which makes it hard to go home because I have to shift from like perfect peace and quiet to like literal chaos. On, right? Yeah. Whereas Kristen, who teaches at your school, she says it's kind of a great in between because like she's with kids, it's kind of crazy, but then she also has the off periods where she doesn't have kids. So like coming home isn't as much of a jarring thing for her because she's kind of been in and out of chaos all day. Whereas I've just been like in this cocoon and then I come home and it's just like ripped off of me by my children screaming. So like,
I remember when I was teaching, I would come home and immediately, like as soon as I would get home, I would take a shower and I would like
rinse off the day.
I would like take a shower and it was like moving into a different space. And then I would put on all like fluffy, comfy clothes. Yeah. And then I was sort of done talking. Yeah. Which I used all of my words. I'm like, my husband who cannot believe that. He's like, I cannot believe you've used all your words.
We can talk about that later, but
we can talk all
about David. That. He's a busy man.
But David is here.
He runs a school. So do you want to get started?
Let's get started.
Love it.
Hello, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast from the City Rise Network. Hosted by Jennifer Dennis and produced by me, Justin Kello, we're a podcast that was supposed to be focused on parenting, but we've kind of lost the plot along the way. Honestly, we don't know what this podcast is about, but we talk to incredible people who love Jesus, and our hope is to provide encouragement and fun whenever possible. If our lack of clear direction bothers you, we apologize, but no one is making you listen to this podcast, unless you're married to Jennifer. Andy, thanks for listening.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Almost Amazing podcast. We're so excited to have you here today, and thanks for bumping along with us after 100 episodes as we still try to hit amazing.
We're almost there, I think.
We're almost too amazing.
We're almost there.
Are we going to change the show name to the Almost Too Amazing podcast?
Listen, I don't think so. I feel like that's an accurate description of what we're capable of doing is almost. I don't know if we'll ever hit it, but I am thankful for this time each week we gather. I have talked to more people in our church family than I probably ever would have otherwise. Like, as a pastor, you have your like pockets of people that you have influence over, that you have connection with. And of course you're like open and visiting, but like this brings in people that I would never cross paths with, people at Missouri City and, people in different ministry areas, people that volunteer in different areas of the church that I don't even see. And so I love gathering each week with our little group to talk to people because it's really opened up and shown me that we have no shortage of incredible people in our church and in our community. We kind of do some things outside of our church sometimes like today, but I've loved this. I think if no one listened to this, I'd probably still do it.
You think you would still come even if no one was listening?
Yeah, but that's not true. That's not true. But
maybe that's not true.
But what's new with you, Jennifer? How are you?
I'm doing really good today. I leveled up my life today. I leveled up for the first time, maybe the second time in my life. I had an umbrella when I needed an umbrella.
There you go.
Like, I can't explain to you what it means. For some reason, it was in my back seat. Mm-hmm. It was pouring today. Yep. When this show finally, comes out, you'll remember, oh yeah, it was raining back then. But And I looked back and I was like, what? Mm-hmm. There is an umbrella.
Wow.
And I can reach it. It's not in the trunk, which is normally where my umbrellas end up for some reason. Reach back. And it's like one of those nice big.
Yeah.
I should not even own. Lauren Gressman and I were talking about why even own a small umbrella. I mean, it fits into your life better, but half of you is getting wet anyway. It's cumbersome.
I've got a small one that lives in my backpack for emergencies, but yes, I prefer the
literally
big ones.
To pop that thing open. Wow. So this is if you want to know if someone's conscientious. That's the new thing right now. Is someone conscientious and a hard worker? If you have both, like it's intelligence, conscientiousness, hardworking, but conscientious is the new like buzzword for someone who's going to do excellent work, right?
I have not heard someone say that in 10 years, but go on.
Whatever. So if you want to know someone's conscientious, say, do you have an umbrella ready to go? Like,
I
or
do.
maybe is your car cleaned out? Is your car cleaned out?
Oh, no.
Yes. Do you have an umbrella to go? Yes. That's all I need to know about you.
Wow.
You're conscientious.
Wow.
Car clean and an umbrella ready to go.
Well, we've been traipsing back and forth to get kids to and from school in the rain the past couple of days. And today I was like, so the other day the kids wore their boots and I just kind of like cradled their shoes until we got there. And then we changed like on the sidewalk and the awning. And then today I was like, oh, I saw mom the other day, like carrying it in a bag. I was like, well, that's smart. And so like I put their shoes in a bag and that way I could swap out and take their boots home. And I was feeling so superior. Like I'm just so smart and so much better than everyone because we had boots and we had dry shoes and they were in a bag. And then we get there and I see a mom with a full blown beach towel and a change of clothes. And I'm just like, I will never, the best dad will never be better than the best mom. Like
the best dad will never be better than the worst mom.
I don't think it's that bad, but anyway, talking about going to school, I actually have, my son has a kid in his class who is the son of a local celebrity.
Oh, nice.
And I just discovered this the other day.
Did you get to meet the local celebrity yet?
Yeah, that's how, well, I didn't know he was a celebrity until I met him.
You're not going to tell us who it is, obviously.
Oh, absolutely I will. And so I didn't say what class name or even the kid's name. So
the school, we don't even know where your kid is.
Yeah, where do they go? But my son has started talking about this kid a lot. And a couple weeks ago, he got a little bit of trouble with them. My son just finds the wild boys. Like that's like his like vibe.
We're the same people.
Yes. He finds the wild boys, the boys that want to be rowdy, and he's found this other boy. So the boy is not a bad boy, but he's another kind of wild guy like mine. And we were hearing this name all the time and kind of what was going on. And we kind of got a situation at school and then we heard the name of this kid. And once again, he didn't really do anything wrong. It was just wild boys. And I was like, well, I need to meet this dad. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need to kind of know what's going on.
Hopefully you had your top on this time.
Yeah, so that we can make sure we're on the same page.
So not at the pool? You didn't meet him at the pool?
No, it wasn't at the pool. And so I met him at drop-off and I heard him say bye to this kid's name. And I was like, oh, that's the kid. And so I was like, I should probably introduce myself. And so I introduced myself to this guy. I was like, hey, I'm Justin. I'm Bear's dad. Bear talks about your son all the time. He loves them. They love hanging out. He's like, yeah, same with us. He talks about, Bear a lot. I was like, great. And so kind of like, I just thought that was it. And then he took that to mean, let's walk and talk. And I was like, okay, great. The introvert in me was like, I didn't really want to do this, but I'm glad that we did because we walked and talked for a little bit. And so obviously talk about work and stuff. And I was like, hey, what do you do for work? And he goes, oh, I'm a meteorologist. And in my head, the only thing I know about meteorology is the news and Space City Weather, which is the blog. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Space City Weather. I'm
very familiar.
You're
not a real Houston if you don't know.
I know, right? So I was like, Space City Weather. That was just in my head. I was like, that's all I know. And he said, yeah, I work during the day. He named this energy company he works for. And then, at night, I'm one of the two guys that run Space City Weather.
What? That is really cool.
And I was like, you're like famous. I was like so excited.
You're like a big deal. You're really the only weather news we really listen to.
You got us through Harvey, And so I thanked him. I was like, hey, thank you for what you do. Like, I know it's a labor of love. Like, it's a side gig.
That's so cool to be famous, but not known.
Yes.
Like you're not bothered in public. Nobody knows who you are.
So even when he told me his name, my brain didn't, he's not like, hi, I'm Space City Weather, whatever.
Yeah, that's not his last name is Space City.
But
he changed it.
But yeah, so I was like, this is really cool, and so we chatted a little bit about it. And, I said, you've had a quiet season. He's like, yeah, it's been great. I'm like, it's been great for all of us to have a quiet hurricane season. So we're all feeling good about it. But it was really neat to make that connection. So my son and his son are buddies, potentially co-criminals,
potentially best friends,
potentially. But
that's really cool.
He was telling me like, yeah, he came from a different type of school, so he's he's just wild. And I'm like, that's my son. Did you tell him you were big
on TikTok? I'm kind of big on TikTok.
I didn't. I don't
know if you know, but
he's way more famous than I am.
I'm sort of a dad on TikTok.
But I was looking for people to brag about this with, and I went to dinner with some guys from church last night. Only one guy at the table 7 knew this blog. I was like, you gotta be kidding me.
First of all, You should have been with these guys, obviously. They don't know specific weather. Second of all, it's really funny how you slide in. Oh yeah, I know this person. That's
but
cool.
I was like, I need to talk about this. I wanted to post it on Facebook. Like I was so excited about meeting this guy because I think he's so cool.
That is really cool.
So now when I say I'm going to try and be like real chill, I'm not like, but part of me is like, oh, I wonder if he loves Jesus. Because if he loves Jesus, he can come on our podcast and we can talk about it.
Oh, yeah. You can have a podcast. We can talk about weather. We can officially talk about weather. About like the whole show. It's funny because we're just getting out of the heat dome.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny now when you come out and it's raining and now it's like rainy, then warm.
Yeah, muggy.
Then you're
sticky,
like in it's like you're in someone's hot shower. Like the whole world is a hot shower.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I don't like that.
I'm not a fan.
Today, it's genuinely like a little chilly. And it puts me in immediately.
It's genuinely a little chilly. You gotta be kidding me.
It's a little cool. Hold on.
What?
I'm pulling out the phone to see exactly
I bet it is 84 degrees.
When you listen, okay, you think it's 84 degrees. I don't think it's that warm. I'm about to find out right now.
Yeah.
So when we're listening to this in the future,
riveting. This is riveting.
People are going to be like, we do not give a rat's tail what temperature it was. Okay, it's 79 degrees. That's like freezing now.
I hear this weekend it's actually supposed to get cold.
That is like go get you a sweater weather.
I hear this weekend it's actually supposed to get cold, and I'm pumped about it because me and Kristen are going out of town. We're in a cabin and like just to get away because Kristen has 2 days off next week, and so
You're
getting away
for the weekend.
For Monday and Tuesday. She has a fall break randomly.
Justin, listen, my parents are coming in tomorrow, and I really want to have them on the show. Will you come in on your day off?
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be kind of fun?
I don't know your parents. I don't know if it'd be fun at all. But
they're amazing. Well, I don't even know if they'd be willing to come on the show.
Well, let's pray about it.
But that's a no.
I'm excited about the cool weather because we're going to a cabin and it's nice to be cool at a cabin and not sweaty at a cabin. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Sounds lovely. Yep. You guys have a wonderful
We're just
time.
taking books and puzzles and no children. So it's going to be nice and quiet.
Books and puzzles and just silence.
Silence.
It is golden.
Silent
That's
reflection.
From what I hear.
Yes.
Well, it sounds like everything's going well with you. I'm excited about our guest today.
Yep.
We have an actual expert, if you will. And for many of us, we're always asking questions about education. So today we brought someone to talk about just that. So I'm so excited to introduce our guest for today. Please introduce with me David Howe, Director of Schools. No, I got it wrong.
Head of
Schools for Veritas Christian Academy. Welcome, David.
Hooray.
Welcome.
Yay, thanks so much. It's so much fun to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jennifer and Justin.
Full disclosure.
The great thing about this podcast
I know what's coming.
I'm going to say, because, normally we back up and redo it, but Justin doesn't like to edit anymore. So we just leave all of my mistakes in.
But I'm saying this is my wife's boss's boss. So like she does, she interacts with you a little bit, but she has a supervisor directly over her.
Now we're here with another boss.
Full disclosure, I got to be really careful what I say.
Disclose.
You know what's so funny? When he emailed me last week, I told Kristen, I was like, hey, email me, I didn't get to it. She's like, you need to respond to him.
Kristen.
Do not leave him hanging.
Get in there.
Well done, Kristen. Thank you.
So one of my good friends is also Sonia DeArmond.
Yes.
She's our pastor at City Rise, the Bellaire campus's wife.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we are very connected with
We
Veritas.
have 4, actually. I won't name them all, but we have 4 Veritas staff members that I know of that go to one of our campuses. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. We everything that you just said about your church. I mean, a lot of our family members, and then Miss Kello, Miss DeArmond, they're wonderful teachers, and we love having them in the community as well.
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And I'm sure
not just saying that because Justin's here.
Yeah.
I would be saying that even if he wasn't here.
Yeah.
And not on the show.
We're not surprised. We would assume that they would be wonderful teachers for sure. So now as head of schools, something that in this community, and we've talked about this before, in this community, like the way we connect with each other is talking about where you're going to send your kid to school. Like that's the whole conversation.
Yep.
And so I guess my question for you is young parents or people who are listening to the show today, and I know you're coming from a Christian school perspective. So it's almost like, so all of us have all these options. What should a parent be thinking through as they make these decisions for school?
That's I think values and fit. I'd say those are the 2 things, right? Values. I mean, you may know a little bit about Veritas, but our mission statement, we are a Christian school in the classical tradition. We're here to prepare kids for lives of learning and service. And we do that through multiple ways, but primarily 4 buckets. One is biblical literacy. One is character formation. The third one is going to be academic excellence. And finally, the last one is going to be intentional engagement opportunities. And so, when there's a saying that fit is it. And so when we think about, what it means for these kids to be, kind of building a foundation for life for these kids, we believe so deeply in our Christian mission. We believe so deeply in raising these kids well and making sure that, they have just, all the character elements, all the biblical elements that is so aligned with, our community and kind of like what we're all about. So I'd say for parents, right? Like, I think that's got to be the first piece, like what's the mission and what's going to be the values of the school? If you're, in particular, if you're interested in Christian education, I think making sure how serious, the Christian school is about that. Is it just a historical piece? Is it an add-on, or is it at the core of who they are? And so that's kind of like the Veritas, right? That's always been our tradition. We keep Christ at the center, and and everything else, right? It's about our Christian mission and student success, and everything else kind of goes from there. And so you want to be thinking and looking at schools that really are dialed into that hire great professionals who are dialed into that, and that have community members who are really, really in support of that as well.
So let me stop
that though. That's huge about making sure a Christian school actually has Christian values, because we just assume if it's got a denomination name on it, I'm not going to name specifically, but we just assume if it's got like a Christian denomination on the school that it's a Christian school, that it promotes these Christian values and it does these things. I don't think you can safely assume that. I don't think you can assume that just because it's got a Christian label on it, that it actually is carrying out those Christian values and encouraging them in their students. And so that's a huge thing. I just get so worried about parents just thinking like, oh, they're going to Christian school, they're great. And they didn't do any other like actually digging to see how they play out those values. And the same for college too. We were just talking about college. I'm not going to name the school, but like just because it's a Christian college doesn't mean it's a Christian environment, and doesn't mean it's got Christian values that they're promoting. And so I want to land on that point, make sure they hear that. That's huge.
You definitely landed on that.
Okay. Well, what did you want to say?
Aggressively.
Well, that's a really great point though, right? Because the across exactly every level that you said, Justin, right? You really have to like get a feel of the place and like what's the school leading with. It's not just about what they have, right? That's going to be an element of it. But when they give tours, right? I mean, when during open houses, what are they saying of what's, like most like important to them, right? The part of the classical education and what we love at Veritas is about aligning your loves. And so we want to make sure even with these schools, just like an individual level, the first love is for Christ, and that has to drive everything else. And then I think you get a great sense of that if you, right, see how they first kind of, respond to it, and then just kind of ask the right questions. But we should definitely never take it for granted that just because something has kind of, Christ in the name, that they're going to be the same, right?
Sure. Now, for some people, their option is to stay public. And I think and I do see a lot, I mean, there does seem to be more and more families maybe considering private or different kind of options. But my question is, now that the majority of people are in the public school system, and that is becoming probably less and less godlike or godly driven. This may be a weird way to say that.
I would love to see where this question is going, because if you're going to ask him if he thinks Christian school is better than public school, he works at a Christian school. Like, of course he's going to say that.
That is not my question.
Okay, what is your question?
My question is, for the parents who choose a public school, what do you recommend to supplement or to partner with that? Or how do you recommend they continue a godly rearing of their child in a public school setting?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have a great respect for the public schools. I think I would say here's a difference. And I'm thinking of, the heart of a Christian school, right, is really about its educators. And so we have one of our faculty members, that came from a public setting. I think what they said the difference is they were so almost even like, and this is a person who had been in church for a long time, has a vibrant faith, has been teaching for a long time too. But it's even like it was so ingrained in them that in the public school, you can't talk anything about God. You can't talk anything about Jesus, right? And so to have an environment where like that's put on the forefront, I think is a huge value add. And, as it relates to the kind of the question you had about, my recommendation would be the same one I have to our parents at a Christian school. When I talk to and welcome our new parents, I say this, folks, I remind our parents, you are still the primary disciple maker of your children, as in this thing that matters the most to us as Christians, right? We can't farm out either. So, I think that would be the same type of advice I would still give to, irrespective of whatever school you go to, right? At a Christian school, you're just going to have so much support behind that. And so our challenge is honestly just to make sure that our parents don't have the mentality like, well, they're in a Christian school.
Yep.
Got it. All right. Yep. You all make sure that our kids they get a Christ-filled education and then they're discipled well, right? Like that is essential to us, but we can't farm that out, right? Just like I'm reminded that as a dad, even as like, okay, I am still the primary disciple maker of these wonderful human beings. And so I think just if you're in a public school, you're going to have to do that and be that much more intentional is what it is, right? It's the same message, but you probably won't have the current of a community helping with that. So that means whatever level of intentionality you have, I'd say kick it into even a higher gear. There should be even a greater sense of urgency behind it.
That's a great point. That's like a really good answer too. And it's funny, but I'm the kids stuff director here. We work with the children, and we too, it's like you want to tell parents, we get them for basically, if you come every Sunday, 100 hours for a year. 100 hours is nothing. That's 3 days. That's 3 days with your children for an entire year. You have got to be the primary, you have got to be the voice, God's voice of your kids in your home. It can't be all on us. And
100%. Can I share a personal story actually with one of my daughters? And it has to do, it was such a humbling moment, So one of our daughters, our oldest daughters, I mean, we've been talking with Christ with her for a long time, right? She's heard our testimonies. But here's why sometimes it requires the strength of a community. It was so incredibly humbling because last year through a assignment in Mr. Harmon's class, that's what actually led my daughter to give her life to Christ. And that's amazing, right? Like, I mean, I believe in this so much, but it takes it on another level when it happens to you. It was like an assignment of basically go home and, either if if for the kid, if you know Christ, share your testimony. If you don't, you can also just like ask your parents, about their testimony. And I think we had shared that with Hallie previously, but it took that assignment and her heart was in the right place, right? Like she was ready, right? When Paul talks about there's going to be some who water, some who plant, some who reap. I mean, it was amazing because she came home from that. And then, she sat down with my wife, Claire, and she's like, I want to give my life to Christ. And it was amazing because it was before Easter and we signed up like just in time for our church. So I got to baptize, right? My own girl. So stories like that, it's kind of like, wow, like it's, it gives whether it's a school and then hopefully, people are plugged into a church. It takes a whole entire community just like raise these kids and us as parents to realize like, this is my primary responsibility. And I literally like need a village to actually do this well together.
Right. That's a really great point. What, now how did you get involved in this?
Yeah, that's fine. I want to hear your career trajectory.
How did you end up at Veritas?
Yeah. Like how do you become the head of school? Like, I want to know this.
Are you thinking about being head of school?
Like you don't.
Well, he's
like,
no way.
He's testing out the call, right?
Yeah, no way. Jeez Louise. No way.
Well, first, so I'm trying to think, the career-wise, I want to sum up, like a long story in a kind of a concise way, right? So it all kind of began at Bellaire, that's where I went for undergrad. And, I'm the only child, the traditional, kind of Chinese parents. So the joke is, like so many Asian Americans, I was pre-med, right? And I was pre-med for a little bit. And then I was like, I don't want to do pre-med, I want to do pre-law. So I went to Bellaire. I was still seeking kind of, just real open to faith at that time. Had gone to church, but like really hadn't like fully committed my life to Christ at that point. But Bellaire, being the largest Baptist university, I was like, all right, I like what they're about. So that year and just my journey at Bellaire is realizing, when I got involved, I had probably the best undergraduate experience you could have asked for. The incredible, just academically, just learned so much, part of honors college, and then got involved as student leader and student life, and the people I met and student life at the time, when I'm thinking of a few individuals, they were such an incredible role model for me. I'm like, you know what? That's what I want to do. I want to do this role. I didn't know like this role existed, but that's what I want to do. But at the time, I was already kind of committed to law school. I was like, well, we'll see if this kind of makes sense. So maybe later on in life. So I knew at that point, this is like my vocational call. This is what I want to be doing. But I headed up to law school, went to Boston College, and basically after my first year there, after my 1L summer, which is the first year, doing some of the work, I'm trying to like find a 5-year exit plan. Like, man, instead of doing this, like maybe I should just like pursue my calling. I knew what my calling was. My calling was to work in Christian higher education. And so, the Lord opened up some amazing doors. I know at the time, but, I found out I could get a dual degree. So I got my master's in higher education administration along with my JD, and I crammed it into 3 years. Whoa. Because I didn't have the time, money, or energy to do 4 years. But I could do it in 3. So I met with my advisor. I'm like, please just give me a bunch of like exceptions and waivers. And then they're like, we don't recommend this. I was like, thank you, but can I do it? Is it feasible? And they're like, well, not. It's feasible, but like, just please sign. Yeah. So they were kind enough to sign, and then I finished up my dual degree. Came back to Houston at my last year of law school. I was married. That was my first year of marriage. And, I was taking too many hours of grad school, 17 hours, a semester, while working, kind of a part-time job at Tufts University as a resident director. So fast forward, come back to Houston, and I get to do some just amazing things in Christian, higher education. First at, Houston Christian University, formerly HBU, but now HCU. So I was there for almost a decade. And I got introduced to this field that I didn't even know existed, which is called student success. And so very, very kind of adjacent and similar to student affairs, but it's looking at like, what are the conditions that help a student succeed academically, holistically, all those things. And, I found something I didn't know existed, and I loved it. And so I got to do that for a few years, and eventually became the dean of student success there. We built out an entire team. We had great success with a few grants from the government where, we got to accelerate our efforts. So I was there for about 9 years, and then, as life would have it, the kind of, we really had done kind of a lot of the things I had set out to accomplish. And I was like, well, what's kind of next, Lord? We can certainly, there's going to be continued opportunities here. But at that time, there was an opportunity open at the University of St. Thomas. And so I didn't know anyone there, but I was like, but what intrigued me about it is that, they were looking for a position that I felt like just like had all the skill sets I had, right? They combined my two loves of student affairs and student success kind of combined. And so I got to spend, some time there, and it was incredible, right? I mean, my wife and I were both Protestants, and so during the interview, I remember that I was like, well, like, I love your mission. I believe you can further your mission. I want to be clear, like, what I'm about and who I am. And I think this gels if you all think so too. And we had an awesome opportunity there. So I was there for a while, and I was just really happy. We were doing a lot of great things. And then this opportunity was, it was both a surprise and not. Like, I never ever thought I would be a head of school, like of a K through A place. There's just never ever crossed my mind. I loved higher education so much that I figured that's what I keep doing, right? But there was a search firm involved. I got in the conversation with them, and there had been a buddy who had been just thinking like, hey, David, like I really, for years, she had been saying like, I know you love higher ed, but I honestly think like, you would really love, doing some of like this K through 12 stuff. So I was always open to it. So when I read the job description, had the, conversation with the search firm, I was like, okay, let's just take the next step and see what the Lord does. And it wasn't until I was a finalist, and then it was a finalist interview where I was on campus, what made me like truly go from like, you know what, Lord, I'm exploring this to like, this is where I'm supposed to be, was that day. I've never had just a time like that where I spent, first it was a very long day. I think they did this intentionally to like, I don't know, wear me down, right? So like, oh, let's get them real honest, okay?
Let's see who breaks.
That's right. So I was like 8 a.m. Test his resilience, right? So 8 a.m. to like 8 p.m. It was a full day, and I met with like everyone,
Good
right?
Night.
And because I was at a place where I was just like really happy with where I was professionally and such, my approach was like, look, I'm just gonna like talk about what's true to me, and like let's see how the response is from these community members. And so things gelled so much. I've never had an interview like it where like I felt the Lord's presence and like his call so strongly. Like literally, I was like, when I left that interview, I was like crying the whole time.
Wow.
Right. Going back. Cause I'm like, oh my gosh. Like I just felt it. I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm thinking like, I've never had remotely this close of an experience anywhere. And so I get home and Claire's like, are you okay?
What did they do to you?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what did they do to you? I was like, I don't know, babe. I was just like, golly, seeing these kids, seeing the community members, hearing what they're about, what they want, what they hope for, what, like their hearts for Christ and everything. So, that's how, I was like, well, okay, we'll see. Lord, I think I'm in, we'll see how the rest plays out. And sure enough, it all worked out. I was like, okay, we're going to do it, and kind of jumped in, and it's been a crazy and amazing ride. Yeah. And I'm so glad I've done it.
Yeah. Well, it seems like your skill set and what God's prepared you in is such a great fit with the student success, with all of the different experiences you've had. What a beautiful fit.
Yeah.
I totally agree.
You mentioned your parents early on. I'm just real quick curious. Were they Christians? Like how did you come to faith? Because you talked about going to college. You were kind of not really.
Yeah, that's right. No, so my parents are like probably agnostic, and they've always been so supportive of like, my Christian faith. And so that's always been the case. Like, oh yeah, we encourage you to do it. But the story is essentially, it was just through a buddy of mine in high school that he was like, hey, and he and I, we were just, his name's Eric Benavides, and he and I actually, in a couple of weeks, I'm flying to his wedding, right, back to Mexico. So we've been kept in touch this whole time. But yeah, we were just like a bunch of like hooligan kids who got to know each other, and he was he grew up in a Christian family. He's like, you should come to church with us. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm really like, I'm very open to that. And so that was really like kind of the beginning of me, like entry point, getting in church, at least hearing some of these things. And then when I was going to Bellaire, as you were saying, I had such a, like an open like spirit about it, though I hadn't like fully committed, right? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm a Christian. I think Jesus, I had a lot of just a hard time. I think just at the time, like what was hard was the exclusivity of Christ for me. Like the God done, right? Like that wasn't difficult for me, but I was like, man, what, like when Jesus says like, he is like the way, right? I'm like, okay, I find it a little bit hard. And so it was really through my journey with people at Bellaire and through apologetics that, I felt like that was kind of like, that really filled in the gap and kind of led to like me falling like, all right, like I'm fully committed to this.
I love that.
I do too. I think that's amazing, man. It's so good to hear your heart and hear from you and talk about education. And man, what I really love is you can see God's handprint in your life, and it's been a lot of great, unique opportunities. So thank you for sharing with us about that. So we have one, we call it our final question.
Yes. Ooh.
Which I hope it's, Justin provided this one today.
We all answer it. It's just kind of a fun question.
You all answer.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Okay, so we'll answer first.
Oh, so I was going to say, like, I was going to ask you to go first.
Yes, right. Exactly. Growing up, was there a name that you wish you had, whether it was the cool name or it was like
maybe even a nickname? Yeah, if you're a nickname you wanted.
That you're like, man, I wish I had that name and not this name.
And this was my question, so I will go first. I'm prepared.
Yay.
So
Justin.
My full name is Justin Lane Kello, no biblical name. And so growing up, I didn't really care. But when I got in high school and I was a Christian and really growing in my faith, I was like, gosh, I wish I had a Bible name. Like I just, like David, like I don't, and my brother's name was James David. And I was like, what,
You got both of them.
No. And so I didn't have one. And I was like really bummed out. And then one day my mom told me, or growing up, she's like, yeah, she goes, I actually wanted to name you Justin Paul, but your dad wanted to name you Justin Lane, which Lane is my mom's middle name. So she's like, come up with that. I was like, so I could have had a Christian middle name.
You could be called JP.
And you were just, I know, it could have been JP.
JP.
Like, it would have been great. But like
that
Paul,
is a pretty cool one.
And Paul is like, to me, one of the coolest, second to James. James is a rock star.
JL.
No one's called JL. Yeah, and I never had a cool name. But so Paul was a name. I didn't wish it was my first name. I wish it was my middle name. But I always I was like, gosh, Mom, why didn't you fight harder for Paul? Because that's
my reasoning is nowhere near as spiritual as that.
Okay.
But I remember being in, I think I was in the 4th or 5th grade, and no, it was earlier than that. I think it was 3rd grade. And there are all these girls in my class. They're all the cool, fun, cute girls. They're all best friends. And I would just sit there and think, why don't I fit in with them? Why did I not connect with them? And I realized they all had 5 letters in their names, and all of their names ended in a Y. So it was like Kelly, Penny.
Why don't you go by Jenny?
Nancy. And I was like, why? Right. I should have just gone by Jenny. I didn't even think about that. I don't think my mom would allow that.
Okay.
But I was like, but yeah, they were all like Kelly, Nancy, Jenny. I think there was a Carla.
Okay.
Really crazy
Random
name.
amount of
Carla. Oh, you could have been a Carla.
Carla's always having a good time.
So what name did you want? Heather.
Yes.
Wasn't there a movie called Heathers?
Yes. Heather was like the cool name. I'm such an old lady. But yeah, I was like, why isn't my name like Nancy or something cool like that?
So Nancy was the name you wanted.
Susie. Anyway.
Okay.
So it was the 5-letter in with a Y thing for a while.
Okay. Wow.
All right.
Okay,
David.
so I have if it's okay with you, I have a small twist on the name piece.
Sure.
Right? Because it's almost like 3 different things. But the first part is this is how Jennifer, you're saying like how like even looking at like my career and such, how like the Lord connects the dots, right? Like I would say, yeah, it's the same thing with a lot of like kind of the names, my Chinese name and my American name, English name David. So my Chinese name is Hao Quan. And so so David Hao, right? Pronounced slightly differently. In Chinese, it goes first. So the family name goes first, so Hao Quan. And then a Quan is a really interesting name that my parents picked because its meaning is whole or complete. Well, like they weren't Christians, right? But like think about it from like us Christians,
cool.
like, oh my gosh, right? Like what makes us whole and complete? Like our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, right? And so like even from there, you can see like how that was really cool. I'm really thankful they decided to give me actually like the name David. And so for their names, it was Ji Sun. And so that's my dad's name. He's like, well, what's something kind of close? Jason. I'm like, okay, so he's Jason Hao, right? And my mom, her Chinese name is Lingzhi. And so she's like, well, what's kind of close? Linda,
Yeah.
kind of sounds close enough, right? So Linda. And then for mine, they're like Quan. Like nothing's too close to Quan. So I'm grateful they didn't. So my name, my legal name is David Quan Hao. We added it to my middle name, but there's 2 reasons I'm really like thankful, right? One, just the pronunciation is really difficult, right? Quan, like try and say that if
Yes.
it's not the easiest to pronounce.
No.
And when you write out, it's Quan, so people are going to say Quan, right? So I would have been like called like Quan Hao or something like that my whole life.
Yep.
So and here's the other cool story, right? When my dad first came to the United States, just because it's like cultural and stuff, he's like, well, like he knew some people who went to church, so he read through the Bible a few times. And so the name David, beyond it being kind of popular, right, in China, was he's like, well, I've read through some of the biblical stories, the King David, he seemed like a, decent. So, like you seem like you didn't make like too many terrible mistakes in life. That was one of the better kings. So, we'll choose David, right? Wow. And so that's how I ended up with David.
So you're happy with your name?
I'm like super happy. I'm like, if nothing else, I'm like, thank you for not calling me like just Trent or something like that.
Yeah.
I would have been. So many people would have been so confused.
Yeah.
Right? And it's so wild that you have such a strong biblical name with the gospel message.
I know, right?
The parents who have
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my parents are straight up Southern Baptist, and it's like
then they uncross their
Jennifer
mind.
Lucinda.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, I'll say this about the Chinese name. That's so interesting. A lot of cultures obviously do that when they come over to America because their names are just too hard for us dumb Americans to pronounce. So they change it. But I had a friend in college who she came over from China when she was 4. And she just remembers vividly having a conversation with her parents saying, your name is Angela now. When they say Angela, they're talking to you. Obviously, they said this all in Chinese. But like, so when you go to school, if they say Angela, that's you. Okay. Like, she has this vivid memory of her name changing.
Oh, that's funny.
Which is
so
wild. Yeah.
Well, David, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
We really appreciate you coming. Would you tell us a little bit about how to get a hold of your organization?
Yeah. You can visit us at, veritasca.org. That's our website. You can just Google, Veritas Christian Academy of Houston. You can look us up there. We're a wonderful community of just under 200 students. And, it's just a intimate and just Christian filled, classical tradition place. And, that we're always looking for great fit families, Christian families who are just aligned with what we're all about in our mission. And that's how, the place has, it's always kind of had that approach, and we're going to continue to. So thank you all. This has been a lot of fun. I've done a few of these things before, but I think this is actually the most fun I've ever had. So thank you, Justin, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Well, you seem like a pretty fun guy. So
I'll say this too about Veritas. If you are a Christian teacher and you're looking for a space,
thanks,
when
Justin.
it comes summertime, if you're listening later or whatever, or log this away, teachers move, things change. They're always trying to fill spots, but it's a great place. My wife has really found a great community there to serve and work with, and she really enjoys it. So if you're a Christian teacher and you're like, I really want to get into Christian schools, or whatever, come summer, check them out, visit that website. They may have an opening for you. But thanks for listening.
Absolutely.
If you enjoyed this show, please share it, like it on YouTube, send it to somebody that might enjoy it. If you know of anybody who wants to talk to, email us at podcast@cityrise.org. And if you're listening on a podcast app, please rate, review, and subscribe.
all right. Thanks a lot, you guys. Thank you for being with us. We hope you've had an almost amazing time on the Almost Amazing Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Almost Amazing Podcast from the City Rise Network, based in Houston, Texas. City Rise is a partnership of church campuses, nonprofits, and missionaries devoted to lifting our city and the world by generously giving the gospel of Jesus Christ. For more information or to find a church campus close to you in the Houston area, visit cityrise.org.